Well everyone, let's go ahead and compare the iPhone 5s and compare it against the iPhone 5 and see how both these phones hold up in 2023. Now both these phones are quite a bit old as of this point, and I would not recommend anyone buying these iPhones anymore, but it's still very interesting to see how both these devices kind of compare in 2023. If you want to pick up some iPhones I would recommend buying this year though, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the outside of both, the iPhone 5, which came out in 2012, has a 4-inch IPS LCD panel on the front, and it's a pretty good display. There's really not a lot to complain about with this specific phone. I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with this design as it came out in 2012. I mean, it's like 11 years old now, and big bezels at the top and bottom, but this was a new redesign for iPhones at that moment, and it was the first change in screen size that we got at that moment for iPhones. On the iPhone 5s, it took that same exact design, so it has that 4-inch IPS LCD panel on the front as well. Pretty much the same type of resolution. You were getting a Touch ID sensor on the front though, which was really cool. So now you had that fingerprint sensor, which was a really nice touch, and that was something I actually did appreciate a lot about my iPhone 5s. Now both these phones have lightning ports at the bottom, which is so cool. Flat sides all throughout on both these devices, and they both have the aluminum back as well, with the camera set up on the top left. And overall, these phones are very small nowadays. I think everyone kind of knows that, but it is what it is. I think these phones are great. There's not a lot to complain about here, and although I wouldn't even think about recommending to buy these phones anymore, it's still kind of interesting how they kind of have held up throughout the last several years, almost like over a decade now. In terms of the cameras, they both have that 8 megapixel camera on the back and a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera, and these phones were very similar from that perspective. You were basically getting the exact same type of sensor for the most part on both these phones. The same 1080p on the back, the same 720p on the front. I'm surprised people didn't really talk about it more. Maybe a lot of people talked about it at the time too, but it's still quite insane that we had that similarity in the camera setup. So I'm sure the iPhone 5s is going to be that better camera overall, but the iPhone 5 is still a very decent camera for the most part as well. So you're really not even missing out on too much from that specific standpoint either. So from that situation, that kind of covers it up there too. In terms of the actual software, I mean, they're both kind of outdated with software, but the iPhone 5s still is kind of getting software updates on iOS 12, which is insane. You would never think that a phone like this, for how old it is still getting software updates, but that is still the case, and that is something that is just phenomenal to kind of think about within the iPhone 5s. Now, in terms of performance, both these are a little bit kind of different too. I mean, the iPhone 5 had that Apple A6 chip inside of it with 1 gigabyte of RAM, where the iPhone 5s has that Apple A7 chip inside with 1 gigabyte of RAM as well. So once again, you're basically getting almost the same type of performance. Not necessarily, like the iPhone 5s is still going to be the faster phone as far as I can tell, but from a majority of things that you're going to do with it, from gaming to whatever, both these phones are probably going to run into the same issues where a lot of the applications are not going to be able to be used because they're on an outdated version of the software. So that's just kind of what happens, and that's kind of the situation you're going to be stuck in that specific perspective as well. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I'll tell you is you're definitely going to be getting a much better phone from something like an iPhone 6s than from both of these phones. I wouldn't really recommend buying any of these phones anymore, but it is interesting how similar these phones were. There was a lot of overlap and a lot of similarity, and then looking back, it kind of seems like the only upgrade you were getting was basically that fingerprint sensor, which is kind of funny. So that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.